We want to wait for Sean. We can wait for Sean if you'd like. He should be on his way.
Good evening, all. Welcome to the Planning and Development Board meeting of August 10th, 2021. I will be the chair this evening, and I might change things up a little bit as we go along. I think we do roll call first.
Yes, sir. Michael Boyd,
Here.
Timothy Connor, Jack Corbett,
Here.
Mike Goodman,
Here.
Mark Langello.
Here.
Anthony Lombardo advised us he was not able to attend tonight, and Fernando Melendez. Thank you. We do have a quorum.
At this time, we should all stand and pledge allegiance to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Public for which it stands.
Justice for all.
At this point, I will ask for approval of the minutes of the prior meeting on July 13th.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Are there any changes? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Passes unanimously. I guess the audience should refrain from clapping, booing, or shouts of approval or disagreement to avoid potential legal ramification and possible overturning of a decision by the courts. A public hearing must be fair in three respects: form, substance, and appearance. At this point, we're going to change the agenda up a little bit and allow Jerry Finley, who has a very short presentation to make, and then get to the larger issue at hand. Jerry? And that goes to...
Yeah, Mr. Vice Chair, provide a quick presentation here. This is Unit 16 in advance of Mr. Finley's presentation, answering any questions you may have there with us. Unit 16 shows up just on the east side of the canal. At the very top of this graphic that you see here would be Old Dixie Highway, our sewage treatment plant, formerly our sewage treatment plant, now under the ownership of Flagler Governmental Utility Authority, is just northwest of this site. And so this was a site that had not been previously a part of the project. It was a part of the limits of the ownership by WL Residential Land. It had been set aside as a park, and through some swapping, we then swapped this parcel for the parcel to the north of this that would be more easily utilized by us for a park facility with that Old Dixie frontage, and actually have earmarked that for, at this time, public safety uses. And so this came on into their land use program. It fits in right now with where they're heading with this. You can see graphic, it was always part of the planned unit development, always within the limits of the DRI itself. It does have that mixed-use, low-intensity designation consistent with the rest of the Plantation Bay DRI. And then this being our flood zone map, we have Zone X there, so no consideration from flood zone. We did include in the soil analysis. We do have a bit of depressional area that's there. That's right in the very center. That's that wetland that you'll see on the graphic, and that's basically remaining just as is. And so you'll see a pretty good little pattern here for what's being proposed with this. Single-family detached lots, again, working in well with their land use program, and so adding this area in. Designated as low-density residential, 4 to 6 dwelling units per acre. When we did our resolution bringing this into the development plan, 73 single-family detached residential lot subdivision. Minimum lot width here 50 feet, lot size 6,500 square feet. Amendment of the specific development standards for Unit 16 is also needed, and that's within your packet. That's that kind of long extended PUD that we've had that has a one page that's added to this every time for each of these new units that are happening in the land use program within Plantation Bay. With that, I'll close with the three recommended actions that we have here for you. Recommend approval of the request, and along with that would be both the site development plan and that supplemental development agreement, those supplemental standards. The second option would be denial, and the basis of the denial would be that the request does not meet the requirements of the comprehensive plan, the land development code, or the DRI development order, that it's inconsistent as presented. And then the third option for you would be continuing the request for a time and date certain. We'd ask that that be the next meeting, and that ordinarily would be for something that we're lacking in the application, either from our standpoint as staff or the applicant. With that, I'll close. Await any questions or comments from the board, and Mr. Finley may have something to add there, but thank you.
I believe I have to say that this request is quasi-judicial in nature and requires disclosure of any ex-parte communication. Okay. Thank you.
Jerry Finley, Finley Engineering Solutions. I'm the engineer for the project. Adam, can you put the map up again? The aerial? And is there a way to point at things, or not really? Okay, I'll just explain.
I got this cursor, so if you guide me, I'll help you.
Good. Along with this proposed construction, we also have under construction Unit 9, which goes from, if you can point at them.
Over here?
Right there in a circular pattern to get down to Unit 13, which is, the roads are in yellow down there, right there. And then also we have Unit 9A, which is the road out to US 1 and the new entrance to US 1. So all of this area within months will have that second access to US 1. You probably have seen the turn lanes already constructed at US 1. Adam covered everything real well. I don't have anything to add. If you have questions, I'll answer.
Mark?
I just noticed when I was looking at this the other day that the map on here has got a lot of information but no lot dimensions. Is that, I know this, we're not doing a plat right now with this, I'm assuming. This is maybe, but there's no dimensions on any of these lots. And I'm just wondering why that is. And it talked about what the front widths were and all that, and I just didn't.
Typically for the PUD, site plan on a PUD, we just give the overall development plan, which this is. Next month, you will see the preliminary plat come through, and normally we track them both together. I'm not quite sure why we didn't this time, but.
Okay, I mean, you had lot sizes and all that were minimum widths.
Actually, about half of the lots are 50-foot minimum, and the other half are 60-foot minimum, so.
Okay.
And 130 feet at least deep.
So when we approve it, if we approve it, but with the 50-foot, and then your PUD or your plat will come in and show that that is what you're doing here eventually?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there anyone from the audience who would like to come up and speak on the subject? I see no one coming forward, so I bring it to the board.
Motion to approve as stated in the option 1, I think.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those, anyone opposed? Carries unanimously. All right, thank you, Jerry. The next item on the agenda is continuance from July 13th meeting. I believe at this point, we should change the way we handle this, since we've heard from both sides about their concerns or their needs, and the planning board should be able to have a discussion and then get comments back from the audience? Is that possible?
Yeah, and mainly what I had to present was basically the prior record, and so that, to my thinking, we put that out there already. You have the basis for the decision, I think, in the backup that I provided, both the SIC manual and the NAICS from now, I think, 2 months ago, along with the language from the C2 Land Development Code. And I have all that prepared if you need to make any specific reference to that. But I'm comfortable with where you're heading, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'll open it up to the board for discussion on, Adam, as what we're discussing now is how we're going to go about writing the new item into the code? No?
Oh, and so, yeah, Mr. Moylan just reminded me, and so that is something I need to clarify for the record, just to make sure everybody, good point for me to say this. This is specific to the determination of use in the C2 General Commercial and Shopping Center District. This was an application made by Mr. Million. I think also, just to be completely clear, his particular application was a determination of use requested to be made by the Planning Board, which is provided in the Land Development Code, specific to C2 within the scenic A1A corridor. And so that's his specific request. The caution I had provided previously, I'll make it again for the record. And I looked at the application, how I wrote up the staff report. It's beyond confusing. So the agenda has it listed as quasi-judicial. My staff report says legislative at the top and then has the quasi-judicial disclaimer. And so I'll say then, again, that I've continued the confusion that I had from before. If you remember when this had its first iteration, I drilled down on the specific parcel. That is not appropriate for a determination of use within the C2 zoning district. What you are doing here in this situation, Planning Board uniquely is called out as the authority for determining, using the standard industrial classification manual as it's provided in the code, to determine if a use that is not otherwise listed is appropriate in the zoning district where the request is being made. We have it show up in several of the zoning districts. I provided that information to you before. Planning Board's called out. It's not Planning Director. It's not Board of County Commissioners. And the SIC manual is used, or is intended to be used as that resource. That is substituted now by the North American Industrial Classification System, or not substituted, but now the more current regulation is the NAICS. I've provided both of them in your packet. The rabbit hole that I mentioned before is the rabbit hole again that I think I'm telling you I fell down, and please do not do so. That while Mr. Million made his request, and we know the request is specific to a piece of property, this request is not related to that parcel. You are to be making a determination using the SIC manual as your guidance, as your reference for this, of whether or not a marina is an appropriate use within the C2 zoning district. And I'd say by extension, Mr. Million was specific within the scenic A1A corridor. And so what I presented before, and I'll again present that, your options as I believe them, you make a determination that it is an appropriate use in the C2 zoning district based on the SIC manual. If you have specific findings, that's even better to include those on the record. Or as an alternative, that you determine that it's an appropriate special exception use, that there's some characteristics that are specific that you feel that it would be allowed, but allowed as a special exception within the C2 zoning district based on the SIC manual. Or the third option would be that you feel it is not appropriate within the C2 zoning district. Again, Mr. Million's uniqueness of his application, he was specific to the scenic A1A corridor. I do think you have to grapple with that, however you need to do so. And I'll submit again for the record, there is a distinction in our code. The C2 is specific in that there are prohibited uses in the A1A, scenic corridor overlay, but not otherwise prohibited uses listed elsewhere within the C2 zoning district. And so we have permitted uses, we have special exception uses, then we have prohibited uses only within the A1A. Again, I'm prepared to show those again to the audience and to the planning board members. They are part of your packet. They're within our municipal code, our code that's retained at the Municipal Code Corporation website. It's in our Land Development Code at Appendix C in Article 3. With that, I'm comfortable with your approach, but again, the rabbit hole, do not run down that. This is not specific to a parcel. This is a determination broadly on uses, and this is unique to the planning board. Making that determination based on the SIC manual, I would say that the NAICS does play a role here because that is now the document that is the law of the land, that has effectively been the new updated version of the Standard Industrial Classification Manual. And to the point that you've got to weigh or grapple with the scenic A1A, I think that you are appropriate to do so because Mr. Million's request did include that within the text, that he's wanting to ask the planning board, is a marina a similar use, an analogous use, a permitted use, based on your review of the SIC manual to other uses within the C2, within the scenic A1A corridor.
All right, thank you. Counselor, would you like to add anything to that?
I would.
Thank you.
The distinction that we're making here is between acting in a legislative capacity versus a quasi-judicial capacity. And there are different rules and standards that apply to each of those actions as the board. This is a legislative item, and you are looking at the code to see if the type of use that is being asked is similar to those that are listed specifically using the SIC manual as a guide. It is a decision that would apply to any C2 zoned property in the unincorporated county. So you are not sitting like a judge in a quasi-judicial capacity looking at specific parties and how the code applies to their proposal, their specific proposal. Rather, you're acting like a legislator, making the rules, making the code, determining whether a proposed use is similar to the ones that are listed. And as a follow-up, I would add, it is appropriate, I think, for you to consider whether the use is appropriate anywhere that is C2, and then also to consider whether it's appropriate in a C2 parcel within the overlay district. It is fine, it is, I think, reasonable to make those distinctions. Finally, I would just caution the members of the public who are quite interested in their byway, understandably, to understand what you're doing here. And we're not looking at the proposal Mr. Million proposed a couple years ago, and we went through the courts and back again. We're not looking at his site plan or his building, but rather looking at the uses in the code to determine if this type of use is similar, if this is the right zoning district for that type of use. I'd be happy to answer any other questions,
Yeah,
but I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, my question is, are we going to discuss what parameters would work for in a C2? Are we going to talk about acreage? Are we going to talk about ratios? I'm just trying to understand where we're going with this.
Those parameters are already controlled by the code. So the code has in your C2 zoning, you have requirements as to the size of the parcels. There, Adam just pulled it up. The planning director just displayed it. The side yards, the rear yards, the maximum lot coverage, building height. Those requirements are already in the code. When this matter came before you, was it in May? This same decision came before you in May, and if I recall, the board decided in the absence of a marina ordinance, you didn't want to make a hard decision one way or the other, and we kind of punted that determination. We've now presented to you a draft of a marina ordinance, took your comments, and later tonight we'll be considering further the language of that potential future amendment to our code specific to marinas and the parking requirements and all those other spatial aspects that'll be part of that ordinance. So that is separate, if you will, and you have to really just focus on the use itself as opposed to the intensity of a particular application.
Well, I'm just looking at this, and it says a minimum of 5 acres. Oh, that's a shopping center, but, I'm just seeing 5 acres here for a number of things. Since we don't have Marina on here, are we using some of the other C2 categories as our guideline for acreage?
And I think the important consideration there is except for lot zone C2 on the effective date of this section, and we hadn't talked about this, but I think it's fair to say that I believe the 2 or 3 separate zoning actions on this predated the establishment of the Unified Land Development Code. I can't quote that, but this was 91, and so I'm sure others will correct me if I'm wrong.
But this is what we're talking about is a new use.
Sure.
So
Well,
again, is the
the
land
C-
requirement for a quote-unquote marina 5 acres in a C2 district? Or
excuse
is
me.
it some other number?
What you're looking at is a maximum parcel size within the corridor, I do believe, if you'll scroll up, Mr. Mingle.
Yeah, this is the one for the scenic A1A is this one, general commercial scenic A1A, maximum lot size is how it refers to it. I didn't write it, award-winning. 5 acres except for lot zone C2 on the effective date of this section. And so this is the section that's devoted to dimensional requirements within the A1A scenic corridor. Shopping centers has a maximum lot size also of 5 acres for lot zone C2.
So those are the dimensional requirements that would apply if you were to determine that this use is similar and allowed.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Does anyone on the board want to please?
Yeah, I have a clarifying question too, and it's, I know we have a lot to discuss, but this will help me moving forward, I think. All right, I understand what's allowed in the C2 shopping district, and then we have the other general commercial areas, right, which is another list, if the planning board approves it, right? Then the next page, we have permitted special exceptions. Do I have this right?
Yes, sir.
So why is there permitted special exceptions and the other general commercial areas? And if we say tonight, it's allowed in the marinas are allowed in the C2 district, does that fall in any particular of these 3 lists, on all of them, or one of them, or not? Because like bus stations are on 2 of the lists. So I'm just trying to clarify that. Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
Yeah, and I was going to be funny and just answer you, yes. So you have the first section that talks about permitted principal uses and structures. We run through that 1 through 21, 22. Arguably, that's been identified not by staff necessarily, but as the shopping center uses. And then because of the construction, so 23 says in other general commercial areas. Well, then look at what the first part is under 23. It says A, all the stuff that's above. And so it says already that on general commercial, and the distinction there being potentially intentional, it's got a minimum or a maximum in the A1A, but it has some lot size requirement, or parcel size requirements, some setbacks, some considerations that are there. I think we all can identify readily what a shopping center looks like. But you've revealed kind of the mix that's there, maybe some of the difficulty that we've got some things. I guess bus stations being one of the
Well,
ones
bus
that's
depot,
called
bus
out.
station, I don't know the difference, but
Yeah, I don't know about that either. And then you have, and so then the one part that I mentioned in the preamble, prohibited uses in the A1A scenic corridor. And so we've called that out. No other district that I can at least remember right now has that prohibition. One more, RC, the other one that has the scenic A1A feel to it, that has that frontage, has that also. And then you have the permitted special exception. So the reason why I'm beating the drum on the prohibited uses in the A1A scenic corridor is because this, and y'all had me talk about this last time, O1C1. Remember the preamble that's here. I got it pulled up. Permitted principal uses and structures in the C2 shopping center district. No premises shall be used except for the following uses and their customary accessory uses or structures. So the idea then is if it's not listed, well, what do we do? Well, then this and others, the O1, O2, the C1, they have that part that comes down and says, like number 22 says here, and again, I'll read it into the record, other commercial uses of a nature, this is what we're considering tonight. Other commercial uses of a nature similar to those listed may be permitted upon a determination by the planning board that such uses are appropriate in the C2 district. Standard Industrial Classification Manual will be used as a reference for these determinations. And so we went one step further when the A1A overlay was adopted, and instead of just saying, well, if the things aren't listed, and then we don't want to give it to the planning board to come up and make a determination later that a warehouse could be allowed. We don't want to have somebody slide that in. So we're actually going to list those things. And so they listed the adult businesses, the mobile and modular home dealerships, whatever. And so they're all listed there as prohibited that were specifically called out in the A1A scenic corridor. You didn't have to do that because the C2 already said unless it's listed, it's not permitted unless the planning board makes that determination. So the board determined at the time when they were doing the scenic A1A overlay, we want to make sure nobody comes in and asks for this because remember, planning board makes that determination using the SIC manual. So there may be something up there that could be similar to something that's there. And then you go down, permitted special exception, section C, subpart C, and then notice there is no permitted special exception list for just scenic A1A. That you just have the permitted special exceptions that are allowed within the C2 zoning district. Again, I'll also make that distinction. It doesn't say permitted special exceptions for shopping centers or permitted special exceptions for your general commercial. So the bifurcation that's happening here is a difficult one. Your shopping centers having your specific dimensional requirements, and so you're coming back. That the intent. I think it's shopping center big things. Minimum project size 5 acres. Not in the scenic A1A overlay, there's a separate section on that. And so then you're pulling from that list of shopping centers. You go down to general commercial, you can do all those things that are in shopping centers along with that extra unique list, that other list that's there just for your general commercial. And then we go down to the dimensional requirements for the A1A scenic corridor specifically. Again, I've thought it's been problematic a bit. Maybe it was intentional, but they're not minimums, they're maximums. Maximum lot size of 5 acres for both. You have your perimeter setback requirements that are there, your maximum building heights that are there, that are unique to those aspects, shopping center and general commercial, specifically within the A1A scenic corridor. I'm mentioning that. I think it's probably good to talk about, at least as that relates to other uses. Remember the context of this item is that you're looking at how those things fit or are approached or addressed within the existing C2. And so I don't necessarily want us to get too tied up with the dimensional requirements because that's not really what you should be considering. You should be considering the SIC manual. The guidance is clear on that, but if you want to look at it and say, well, okay, well, how would a certain use be analogous to marinas in that context? And I think I would extend on what Mr. Moylan had said in the context of the A1A scenic corridor. You do have the two separate dimensional requirements. I think you're able to include those in your own deliberations, but your ultimate determination needs to be made on the SIC manual and the listing of those specific uses within the C2. And that's your very narrow scope on this particular item. Now, the next item that we'll have will be a little broader. Again, legislative in its nature, talking about potential amendment to the code to allow marinas, getting into some of those better, maybe deeper details. But for this pending application, you're limited to the SIC manual and the uses that are listed in the C2 presently.
Thank you.
Please.
All right, so to cut to the chase, could you put up number 22 again?
Yes, sir.
That was kind of a good segue to where that, again, this got confusing in the very beginning. It was clear to me after the first time I went through it, but we have to, this is, again, I'm going to reiterate what you said, this is not about any one particular lot. And in this, we're supposed to look at, this is boiling down to number 22, which is, we have to make this determination of other commercial uses in nature similar to those listed and permitted upon determination of the planning board, and that they're appropriate for the C2 district. So the first thing I wanted to look at was what you had here, and you gave us in your, and it was very short and sweet, in your, it's the SIC manual, SIC 4493, marinas. Establishments primarily engaged in operating marinas, which is kind of a statement of itself, but these establishments rent boat slips and store boats, and generally perform a range of other services, including cleaning and incidental boat repair. They frequently sell food, fuel, fishing supplies, and sell boats. So if I look at what that description is, I can picture, just take the boat and substitute it with other products, and that sounds like a shopping thing to me. The renting thing is a little unusual in the shopping, but the rest of it sort of fits into it. And I know we've had discussion about this warehouse, and then you had in the NACF, and I had it a second ago, and I put it up on my phone. I wanted to get to that thing about warehouse. So what is a warehouse according to that? And now I can't find it. It was very specific as to what it did, and it was different than, you can help me with that, in the NAISC or ICS, whatever,
I can't, I'm getting there.
the warehouse definition.
93.
Warehousing and storage.
Yeah.
Page 405.
Let me see, page 405 of that. I know I have it right here. It's the segment, or the section 493 under this sector 48-49, transportation and warehousing. And in warehousing and storage, industries in the warehousing and storage subsector are primarily engaged in operating warehousing and storage facilities for general merchandise, refrigerated goods, and other warehousing products. These establishments provide facilities to store goods. They do not sell the goods they handle. The establishments take responsibility for storing the goods and keeping them secure. They may also provide a range of services offered to perform as logistics services related to the distribution of the goods. Logistics services can include labeling, breaking bulk, inventory and control and management, light assembly, order entry and fulfillment, packaging, pick and pack, price marking and ticketing, and transportation arrangement. However, establishments in this industry group always provide warehousing for storage services in addition to any logistical services. Furthermore, the warehousing or storage of goods must be more than incidental to the performance of the services, such as price marking. Okay, I won't read the last sentence, it's not appropriate. But to me, again, and being a person who builds warehouses for a living and owns some warehouses, warehouse to me was always a place that goods for sale in a separate location were brought, stored, all those other other things, labeling and price marking, whatever, done perhaps in those buildings, and then sent out to another thing. It's a very industrial type of a thing. It is not a retail or entertainment or anything else. It is specific to that sort of thing. You see them only in industrial districts, and usually, again, around the logistics of trucks bringing things to them and taking them away. And why you don't want it, why I would agree wholeheartedly in the section of the overlay district that you wouldn't want them there, because we're talking about industrial traffic and trucks and so on and so forth, with an activity that serves no other function to that community. To me, I looked at C2 and/or industrial for marinas would fit under the three different tiers that you had in your proposed definitions. I think they do fit in there based on what I was reading a minute ago, and I think that there should be a special what do we call it, the special exception. Thank you. And not an automatic use. I think that by the nature of them, that you'd want to have the board look at it and perhaps impose restrictions that may not be listed in our stuff to help make them fit into a community. I've said it all along too, that if it's a legal operation, you can't prohibit it in your zoning. So you can't come and just take it out of every zoning district. You know, they did that with adult entertainment, and the Supreme Court says you can't do that, and you know, the counties can be sued and whatnot. And we're well aware, and legal in this department in this county, well aware that we can't not put it somewhere. So we have to have it allowed for somewhere. So is it appropriate? Well, in particular, again, because we were talking about it in particular to the scenic A1A. The scenic A1A is an area that is a lot of entertainment. I mean, it is people boating and fishing and going out to dinner. It is something that we, you know, the beauty of the canopies and the trails and the beach, we're all bringing people there to help enjoy that. It wasn't, it isn't just a bedroom community. It's actually a community that is encouraging people from outside of that community to come in and enjoy that piece of our county. And Bing's Landing is already doing that. So we already have it on the water. It already seems to be having it isn't the full marina thing, but it is a boat slips and launching, and they have the food and they have entertainment. A lot of the things that fitting right into this. So I think it is appropriate with a special exception in that area.
Thank you. Further comments?
Just onto that, I just see it, we were in this county and nothing was built here yet, and we were deciding, okay, you know, where do we put funeral homes and automobile sales and pawn shops and marinas and hotels and restaurants and hospitals? To me, marinas would fall right into other general commercial areas. I don't see why it wouldn't.
Unfortunately, I differ with your opinion as far as what a warehouse is. But if it's going to be a special exception, then it has to come before the board every single time. And in that pretext, it might work. So I don't know if anybody wants to make a motion at this point.
Why would a marina have to come here every time when there's already a list under 23 of, I don't know, looks like 25 items
Well, like I said, it's
that
not,
still need to,
it's not a true marina, it's a warehouse. Let's, you're
Well,
saying,
again,
I know
wait a
your
minute,
your
wait a minute. We're not
definition
talking
of-
about any particular application.
I know,
We're just
but
talking
I'm
about a
talking
general
about-
marina.
I'm talking about a marina.
Right.
What is a marina?
Well,
And a
that's
marina,
one of the things.
Go
ahead.
a marina, in my mind, has a safe harbor where you can tie your boat up, get off your boat, where you can get gas, where you can get a bite to eat possibly, you can get repairs done. That's a marina. When something is built as a storage facility, in my mind, it's still a warehouse. And we then have to really distinguish the definition of marina. In my mind, a marina has to have so many, for example, you're gonna have dry storage, how many wet slips do you have to have in conjunction with the dry, so that people can get off and have ingress and egress? The safety issues, is it safe to unload? Those are the things that I'm thinking about. And at this point, I still see that a marina, in the true sense of marina, might work within certain, parameters. But I'm not too sure how we're going to get to that point.
Well, I'd like to answer Jack's question, why I said special exception. Partly is what you just said a minute ago, Mike, but in our next item, again, I keep saying we're putting the cart before the horse, but I think we can still do it this way, because in the next item, the proposed ordinance has got 3 different types of marinas, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. And again, there was a lot of elements to these marina things that could be unique to them. You talked about safe harbor, hours of operation. There's a lot of issues that we could look at with this that I think, because of the way that the ordinance was going, because when we talked about, could one guy have a whole bunch of boats on his one yard? And there was just so many, it was floating between different tiers. So do we leave it up to the planning director to make that determination of what tier it is and how it falls? Or does it come up to us and then the public get to hear about it? So that's why I thought that because of the way it was multi-tiered and other issues around it, that it would give that one other level of process, that it would be perhaps done correctly and not something. So you're worried about a giant warehouse. That's what you keep calling a marina warehouse. So how do you know if it is or isn't a warehouse when they go for the application? They say it's allowed, I can do it, you can't stop me. So that's why I would say, to me, the special exception allows that one other look at it to make sure that it's appropriate, that site plan is appropriate. Because we have special exceptions for a lot of items, and especially now, I don't know if we have C2, and maybe you can answer this question, Adam. Do we have C2 land on the intercoastal in Flagler County that is not in the overlay district? Because again, the marina, to me, would only go on the water. I mean, I shouldn't say that. Maybe I'm wrong, because maybe up on lake, in a lake, you'd have a marina too. So maybe I just answered my own question. But not, I know that majority of the Dead Lake right now is owned by one person, so he's not putting a marina on there.
Could always have, you have that potential for future land use amendments and rezonings. Yeah, and, in thinking of it, you probably have enough other policies that would discourage some of that, greater intensity of use, evacuation zones, things like that. But thinking quickly, I think every C2 zoned parcel I can think of on the island has frontage on A1A and would then be part of the corridor. I'm trying to think quickly and think down to Orange Man, I think all of them.
There is further down. Richard Hamilton owns
Yep.
that piece of
The
property.
Old Crosby Grocery, same deal. It's in the A1A corridor.
So
Yes.
in effect, because of the nature of marina being on the water, it really is pertaining to the scenic corridor. It's almost, I mean, it's there anyway, if you know what I'm saying, except for perhaps maybe on a lake or something, but.
Well, but we're not here to determine if another marina comes up here 2 months from now, it might not be in the scenic corridor.
Well, no, if there's no land for it to be any place other than the corridor, that's what I was just asking him, if there was any other land that it could be in.
Flagler Beach is Flagler Beach.
Right.
Our jurisdiction.
Right.
Marine land out of our jurisdiction.
Palm Coast owns all of their land on
Palm
the
Coast owns
intercoastal.
everything on the other side of the.
Me, Mr.
Intercoastal.
Goodman, if you could speak in this.
I guess I struggle with the way this was originally written. I don't know why you wouldn't need a special exception for a hotel or a hospital, but you would for a marina. That just seems very bizarre to me. Those are pretty big projects, I would think, and they're just other general commercial areas.
Well, maybe we'll let the planning expert sitting over there. That's right, I'm talking about Carlos.
Oh, good. Yeah, Carlos can answer that for us. Please. And so actually, while you were discussing it, I was distracted a bit looking at the list of prohibited uses in the corridor and noticing that the permitted special exceptions are a little different, that apparently you can have a machine shop in the A1A corridor as a special exception, a welding shop. Septic tank service is a special exception use, and it is not specifically prohibited in A1A. I don't see somebody doing that, but I'm not answering your
Well,
question.
we had an artist up there who wells. So could that then,
I think the expectation there is that that's probably more artist gallery, but I understand where you're heading. The special exceptions that are here appear to be those that it seems like they're either related to the noise or potentially odor. You have kennels that are listed. You have things that, truck terminals are big noisy things, tractor sales and service, welding shop, temporary manufactured housing sales center. That's very specific. That's a special exception that's there. Roadside vendors we've had traditionally in the C2 zoning district, also in the ag district. And so those are your listed uses. And I don't know if it's necessarily, hotels being big things, motels being big things. It seems to me to be something that is being regulated because it has some potentially a negative externality that's associated with the operation of the use. Something that creates noise, something that creates odor, something that creates a condition that would need to be regulated through the special exception. Remember, special exception is mainly a site plan. It's your site plan requirements that you're looking at then. You're looking at the orientation of the use on the property, buffering, signage. We think it's some panacea. It's not. It's site plan requirements is what they basically are.
Got to open up to the public if. Can. I mean, if you'd like, just so the public knows, he just
Does
asked me.
anyone on the board want to make a motion on this subject?
I would like to make a motion to determine that the use is similar to C2 district, in the C2 district, based on the definition of a marina in the SIC manual and definition, and not prohibited based on the definition of the warehouse and the NAICS manual, and that it's appropriate to the area.
I'll second it.
All right, at this point, I think we should open up to public comment. Sure.
I'm going to try to, Bob Million for Hammock Harbor. I had written this including some specifics about the particular property. And so as I go through this, I will try to omit them. If I don't, it is an error. Okay. Now, why we're here, and I'm not going to elaborate on it. We're here because 2 years ago, we made an application for a marina in the scenic corridor overlay. And TRC, or the planning director, made a response to an inquiry and basically approved the use. Okay, it was appealed by Hammock Community Association to this board. This board denied the appeal. It was appealed to the Board of Commissioners. Board of Commissioners denied the appeal. They filed a writ of certiorari, and the court simply remanded it back to this board. Now, I'm going to get started on what I'm doing. The history.
Well, we're discussing
understand
at
that.
this point isn't history. We're discussing at this point the motion that's on the floor.
I understand that. And
So
I believe that I've
You're
earned-
not discussing that motion.
I believe I'd earned the opportunity to speak. I'd like the opportunity.
Yeah, but let's speak about what.
I'm going to.
You had your turn prior. We all understand what you've said prior to this.
I have some-
Let's talk about.
I have some
the
new
motion
information.
that's on the table.
I have new information I would like to put before the board. So I'm just trying to give you the preamble on why we are here. Okay, now, I believe that it is an approved use already, okay? It is allowed within the scenic corridor in the general commercial district under either boat service establishments or commercial recreational. Now, let me go down that rabbit hole with you a little bit. There's a 2016 Manatee Protection Plan that the county commissioned. And the county in that Manatee Protection Plan defined what is a boat facility, where should boat facilities be located, what are the definitions of these things. The important part of this is that none of us can make up land uses. If something is permitted, it has to be permitted for a use. Okay, the code is pretty clear about that. There's been talk about, well, maybe marinas could be in a PUD. You can't make up a use in a PUD. It's either permitted or it's not. You can aggregate uses. So here's my point. The county has the same requirements. The requirement for Bing's Landing being a county facility is public recreational use. That's the definition of it. One of the permitted uses in the scenic corridor within A1A for C2 zone property is commercial recreational. Now, the only difference between public recreational is the taxpayers pay for it. Commercial recreational, the developer pays for it. Okay, but they're both open to the public. They're both are recreational uses, and they are both defined in the code, okay? Now, the Manatee Protection Plan also cites where should marinas go. There's a map. They've divided it up into preferred areas and areas that are, let me give you the exact thing, preferred, moderate, not preferred, and conservative, or conservation areas. The hammock, basically from about where Washington Oaks Park stops on the south, down to where the Hammock Dunes Bridge is all preferred area for marinas. So it is specifically listed in the County Manatee Protection Plan that that's where marinas should go. Now, this is not me promoting our project, but in that same Manatee Protection Plan, it states that the Newcastle shipyard, which is where our site was, it's estimated that there's going to be a dry boat storage facility there for 200 boats. Now, this is in 2016. I didn't do it. Now, you get into what is a marina. I think that's really, really important because, you know, you're trying to make up a definition for a marina and a warehouse. Okay? You're bound by the codes. So let's go for marinas. The state of Florida defines marinas. The SIC defines marinas. Okay? The land development codes for a lot of the municipalities define marinas. And here's my point. There's not one single code written, national, state, federal, that the word warehouse and the word marina are in the same code. It does not exist. There is not one national code defining a warehouse that has marinas in it. Okay, it doesn't exist. A boat storage facility is not a permitted use. A warehouse is a permitted use. I'm sorry, a marina is a permitted use, and a boat storage facility is a component of a marina. So look at your land use codes. Okay, if this is a warehouse, it could be defined as one. It is absolutely not. So a marina is defined as having wet slips, dry slips, in all the state codes, in the federal codes. You have an opening where you, the county, permitted a facility for public recreational use, which is one of the things the code allows for us to do, private recreational use or commercial recreational use. The county also specifically permitted the marina at Yacht Harbor Village. You can't do it without a code. There had to be a reason for doing it. And that was done after the scenic overlay. That was done after the code is amended. So if marinas are not allowed in A1A, why are they there? HUDs can't make up a land use. So my point to you is that you don't have to deliberate. This is a permitted use. It's defined. It falls into the category. It's a simple yes or no vote. I appreciate your time.
Just as one,
I'll
one,
take
one,
questions.
one further point.
Sure.
I'm not the one that called it a warehouse. You're the one that called it a warehouse.
Let me clarify that.
No, you don't have to clarify.
No,
I just, you
let
know,
me clarify. You asked a question.
I didn't ask a question. I made a statement.
I get to respond.
Go ahead.
When we did our original site plan, I asked Mr. Mingle how to identify the parking. Mr. Mingle's response was, marinas don't really have parking, so we'll use warehouse. That is the only reason it was defined as a warehouse. I have always been an advocate of properly parking it. I've been an advocate of not minimizing. We don't need off-street parking. We're not trying to create something that is larger than or more intense than anything else that's required. Our site,
Can we keep this item specific to the C2 determination and not, Bob, not your property, okay?
I'm sorry,
Thank you.
I'll do that.
Thank
So the answer to the question, it is not a warehouse. It was done because I was asked to. Any other questions? Thank you.
You gotta come to the mic, you gotta come to the mic.
I was going to say to Mr.
Up to the mic and
I was going to say to Mr. Goodman, I gave Mr. Million 10 minutes. I was going to give Mr. Baer 10 minutes also. Everybody else I was going to give 3 minutes. And so everybody wants me to say that, I'll say that. Thank you. Mr. Millian did speak less than the full 10 minutes. He left 3 minutes on the table, it looks like.
There.
Mr. Baer, you can use your full 10 minutes and Mr. Millian's 3 minutes if you'd like to, so you'll have 13 if you
I don't
wish.
plan on going that long. You all have heard these issues before, and talking about rabbit holes and quasi-judicial and quasi-legislative. The agenda is really unclear if this is quasi-legislative or quasi-judicial. I know Adam's busy, but it is, if it's quasi-legislative, and all the talk you just heard from Mr. Millian about the specifics of his site should be disregarded. A couple of points. I do represent the Hammock Civic Association. Our concern is because of the confusion that's here, that this really is spot zoning, that you're really making this change just to benefit Mr. Millian's property. For example, how does he have standing to represent all of the C2 property owners in the Hammock area? Were any of them notified? Hey, we're changing a use that's allowed on your property. Were they given notice that this is going on? And what's the rush? You know, if this is a general classification change and you've got a draft ordinance for marinas, and we're not talking about Mr. Millian's property, let's do the ordinance. Let's finish the ordinance and get it done. I do like the one comment about special exceptions, and this is something we talked about in the ordinance, and I got to leave, so I won't be here for the ordinance, is that if it's adjacent to residential, special exception should be required for the noise and some of the other issues that are there. However, the recommendations by Mr. Millian ignore two critical factors. One is that under the scenic A1A overlay, and I'll read to you just the portion of the memorandum from Thad Crow, who helped draft the scenic overlay protections, the list of prohibited uses includes, among others, boat sales and repair, outdoor storage, excluding plant nurseries, mini warehouses. It talks about the other things. These activities are typically limited to industrial zoning due to the unsightly nature of the large storage buildings, fuel tanks, and some of the other inconveniences. So there was a reason that they put those prohibitions for boat repair and sales into scenic A1A overlay. And the definition that you heard from the SIC, it included in the definition of marinas, Mr. Langella, I think you read it, other services, repair, sale of boats. So in other words, the definition of marina includes activities that are prohibited in the scenic A1A overlay zone. The final issue, even though I know we're not looking at Mr. Millian's property, so I think you have to look at the future land use map. For this area, it's mixed low-intensity residential. It's not industrial, it's not high-end commercial. So I think that's got to be part of the equation when you're looking at a particular piece of property, even though it's zone C2, it's still got to be consistent with the uses that are allowed in your land use manual. And I apologize, I've lost 90% of the hearing in my ear from a diving thing down in the Keys 2 weeks ago, so I've got this really bad feedback. So if I'm not being clear, I apologize. So basically, our position is that this is not an allowed use as a marina. Let's get the marina ordinance done. A couple other points in response to Mr. Millian. The Manatee Protection Plan is not a zoning ordinance. I represented Sea Ray throughout that process. We were talking about boat intensity, manatee kills, and things of that sort. It has nothing to do with zoning. I find it interesting that we're now talking about public recreational use and commercial recreational use, because I thought we were talking about whether it's a marina or not. So the staff report doesn't even come up with a recommendation of what they think the similar use is. Our position is let's finish the ordinance on marinas. It looks like we may have to tweak, if you're going to go that way, the scenic A1A overlay language as well, but it can't just be a rush to get this done. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments?
I'll be brief. I'm good at brief. So my name is Kathy V., Mr. Chair, board members. I live at 5676 North Ocean Shore Boulevard. So option 2, the Planning and Development Board may make a determination that a marina is similar to other commercial uses listed as a special exception in the C2 district and may be permitted as a special exception use. There are no permitted exceptions in C2 that are similar to a wet slip marina, to my knowledge. However, a dry stack storage facility is a warehouse structure, and it functions as a warehouse. If it's defined as a commercial warehouse, it would be permitted as a special exception in C2. However, it's prohibited in the A1A scenic corridor. So option 2 just doesn't fly. It's not similar to anything. You know, it's a giant warehouse, bigger than this building.
Excuse me, I hate to be the one jumping in here. So what we're trying to look at is a marina acceptable, and you're bringing up about a particular project. So let's just try to keep it on the definition of a marina and the marina being acceptable in a C2, okay?
So I will maintain that there is nothing similar, and this is from your land development code. A marina is similar to other commercial uses. What is it similar to? What do we have now that you can say, oh, yeah, it's just like that? I don't see it. Thank you.
Thank you. And please keep it specific to the question at hand.
My name is Dr. Lynn Rosewater, and I live in the hammock on Ocean Crest Drive. I think it's very important to understand, and I did bring with me that on this site plan.
Dr. Rosewater, I think we're losing you on the microphone. If you, no, you can use the,
Okay.
sorry.
And we're not talking about specific site plans either.
Okay.
We're talking about the
You're
definition.
talking about what a marina is, okay? So I want to tell you about an example of a marina in Brevard County that the planning, the Property Appraisal Board of Brevard County was asked to give an opinion on a 40,000 square foot building for boat storage. It's a Sebastian Inlet Marina at 8685 US Highway 1 in Mico, and asking how the building was classified. This is the reply from John Dawson, Senior Director of Evaluation for Brevard County. The boat storage building that you are referring to, this is all a quote, is a large, approximately 40,000 square foot warehouse building with a small amount of office space attached, which is fairly typical of a warehouse. As such, we have coded the building as a use of 4800 warehouse. The use code of the building reflects the type of structure and the associated construction costs to build such a facility. Essentially, it is a big warehouse with racks placed inside that are used to store boats. So to say that if you're a marina, you can't be defined as a warehouse, Brevard County, they've already done this. So I think that it's important that concept be used, because while he may say that he put this warehouse down because he was told to do it, he didn't come with the idea of a marina. He came with the idea of building the storage facility.
Again, we're getting off the topic. The topic is
Okay, well,
the
what I'm saying
definition of
is,
marina.
Brevard County says this is a warehouse.
Any further comments? And again, please stick to definition of marina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jody Bollinger. I live at 5648 North Ocean Shore Boulevard. There's been a lot of talk about C2 properties, so I was curious where these C2 properties along the intercoastal are located. The chart that I presented to you shows information that I got from the property appraiser's website. So C2, along the Kansas River, there are 5 property owners. The first one happens to be Mrs. Schatz. I happen to know her. Her property is 1.79 acres. It's hardly big enough for a marina. I have a short letter from her in which she says, "I have no intention of building a marina on my property, and I do not support developments, like Hammock Harbor, because they do not adhere to the intent of the scenic corridor overlay." The second one happens to be Bing's. The third one is Hammock Harbor. The fourth one is Hammock Beach Jose Park. Included in their 16-acre purchase are 2 commercial parcels. However, back in 2005, that 16 acres was a PUD. The last one is a gentleman named Richard Hamilton, who Mr. Goodman referred to. I can't really speak for Mr. Hamilton, but I do know he's a former member of the Land Acquisition Committee in Flagler County. He's a current board member of the HCA, of the Scenic Pride. Back in 2019, he actually spoke again against this project. Every C2 property on the river is along A1A and the Hammock. The river's only about 300 feet wide, and there are no natural bases or coves, which leads one to deduce that dry stack storage would be used to store boats. Those call for a huge forklift and a huge gas tank. There are no other permitted uses in C2 which call for those 2 items. A dry stack warehouse, a forklift, a huge gasoline tank. That type of development certainly will not enhance the unique portion of Flagler County called the A1A Scenic Corridor, nor will such a development preserve the quality of life and property values within the corridor. To allow such a development in the A1A Scenic Corridor is to ignore and circumvent the intent of your own land code. I will also say, I know Mr. Langello has mentioned about you can't make something illegal if it's an illegal use. If you look at the latest iteration of the Marina Amendment, it shows marinas being allowed in 18 of the zoning districts. There are 27 zoning districts in Flagler County. 18 of them are going to allow marinas. So there is certainly ample opportunity to build a marina outside of the A1A Scenic Overlay District. Thank you.
Hello again. My name's Dennis Clark. I live at 5784 North Ocean Shore Boulevard. I have a bit of material, so I'm going to have to read a little bit fast, so stay with me. This so-called marina has problems when it comes to the scenic corridor overlay and the attempt to disguise dry boat storage as a marina. As you'll see in your backup material, there are 2 letters providing competent, substantial evidence that this is an improper application of the Land Development Code. They are also the authors of the Scenic Corridor Overlay, one being Walter Fafidio, the prior Director of Planning for Flagler County, and the other Thad Crow, Director of Planning for Clay County, Nassau County, and Palatka. Walter Fafidio states that comparing this to other similar commercial uses only applies to Section 30317B22 for commercial shopping center districts, not to general commercial, which is in the next section. Even more salient is the need for the planning board to determine that a marina is similar in nature to those uses which are specifically listed in the C2 district. I bring to the board's attention subsection 1, wherein boat sales and service are specifically excluded as permitted uses and are specifically prohibited use in the C2 Scenic Corridor Overlay District. Thad Crow's letter is what Dennis Baer said earlier, so I'll skip to the next section, which is on intensity scale and practicality of dry boat storage. It appears that dry boat storage is masquerading as a marina. If you were to take this government services building, all 47,000 square feet, 3 stories high, and place it next to the mom and pop hardware store on A1A, 40 feet off the road, it would be obscene. And yet, it is still 10,000 square feet smaller than the building required for dry boat storage. That's not specific, that's just dry boat storage. Nobody in their right mind would put a marina in this narrow part of the ICW without a protective cove. Flagler County.
I hate to interrupt you, but we're trying to be specific to what we're not talking about
Yeah,
you're talking about a specific location now. We're talking about a general concept. So
Yeah,
you
well,
can keep
pretty much
your-
all the
Well, 'cause what you're
C2s.
talking about right now is specific.
Well,
Stick
all-
to generalities, because otherwise, we're not going to get anywhere.
Okay, the ICW in the scenic corridor is only about 300 feet wide. Flagler County installed a fishing dock and kayak launch at Bing's Landing outside the cove. After a young fisherman was thrown from it due to a passing boat wake, it was quickly removed. So unless we can properly define a small marina like the one at Marineland and protect the slips with a cove, then we cannot approve a marina use in the C2 district. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and board members. My name is Robin Paletta. I wanted to use another expression other than the cart before the horse. I mean, this whole thing is ludicrous. You're discussing whether or not to provide a special exception for a facility that isn't even in the code. You have that on the agenda to set up a code, and before that, you're going to allow an exception for an application, which is basically what you're doing here. I would suggest very strongly, and it's really not fair to the applicant either. It's been 2 years since Mr. Million made his proposal. And it's because of this gap in the code that his proposal has fallen through the cracks, and there's no basis to really approve or disapprove, but to table it until the code is codified, until you can come up with a definition based on whatever professional manuals and standards that apply. That needs to be done first and get it approved by the commissioners. Then you can discuss specific applications and whether or not they need exceptions. I think anything other than this would be completely ludicrous. And you may want to cover your ears. It's really backwards. I'm dropping the other word, but it's a really backwards approach to development. And it's not fair to the community, and it's not fair to the applicant. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jan Cullinane, and I live in the Hammock. Okay, warehouse definition: a large building for storing things before they are sold, used, or sent out to stores. I was looking up some pictures of storage facilities. Here's one. I think it would be maybe representative of what is being planned on being built. And as this company says, dry stack storage is a dry boat storage option that keeps your boat protected inside a warehouse. Okay, here's another one from a place called Extra Space Storage. Boat storage options typically fall into two categories: dry boat storage out of the water and marina boat storage in the water. When you say the word marina, marine refers to water. And then lastly, literary allusion, go back to high school or college. We all read 1984, where they talked about doublespeak and newspeak. Things like war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. You know, a warehouse is a marina. No, it's not. They're two separate things. We're talking about a warehouse here. And then the famous saying by B. Foss Leach, saying so doesn't make it so. I think we all know the difference between a marina and a warehouse. And, you know, if it walks like a duck and acts like a duck, it's a duck. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments?
Ben, how you doing? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jan Sullivan. I live at 35 Nantucket Drive in the Hammock. Number 22 that we were
Yeah, I don't
talking.
want to, where is this from?
This is from the SIC, the Standard Industry Codes. So there are two industry classification codes, and this is just, compelling information. The Standard Industry Code, and what you also have seen as the NAICS. And in 1997, the NAICS came about, and it's the North America classification. And I think probably it has to do with commerce between, for the most part, commerce between Canada, the US, and Mexico. And it's a little more detailed than the older SIC. But it is not necessarily just a replacement of the of SIC. A lot of public organizations and municipalities kept using the older standard industry classification, and they didn't necessarily move to the NAICS. The reason I'm bringing this up is that number 22, which is about finding a new use, references that when you're trying to determine a new use, you are supposed to use, according to our Land Development Code, the standard industry classification. Our Land Development Code was developed in 2000, which was 3 years after the NAICS, so they had an opportunity to change and move to the NAICS, but they didn't. And 21 years have passed since the approval of the Land Development Code, so they've had 21 years that they could have changed the Land Development Code to go to the NAICS, but they didn't. They're still using the SIC. So what you have in your hands is what the SIC is. And notice that so to one of your points, the permitted exception uses that you were looking at in the Land Development Code, that's not where you're supposed to be looking to decide that a marina fits in and it's like a hospital, or it's like this, or it's like that. You're supposed to, according to number 22, not look at the rest of the Land Development Code, but look at the standard industry codes, which is what you have here. So the major group 79, amusement and recreation services. If you'll notice at the bottom of the first page and the second page, it does have some watery things. Canoe rentals, fishing piers and lakes, houseboat rentals, party boat rentals, that sort of thing. But the developers of the SIC, can I have 30 more seconds?
Could you give her a couple, just wrap it up, because I interrupted you.
The developers of the SIC didn't put marinas into this amusement and recreation number 79 major group. They actually put, if you can look at the very back page, they actually made a number 4493 for marinas. So yes, there already is a SIC, a standard industry code major group for marinas. So I suppose you could say that marinas are allowed, according to the Standard Industry Code Manual, in the C2 district. The problem is the definition within this 4493 marina, there are a couple of things in there that are not allowable in the A1A scenic overlay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's more than anyone should ever know about industry classifications.
Good evening. I'm Roger Cullinane. I live in Ocean Hammock. I just wanted to really briefly read 3 comments from Flagler Live about this whole process. And I've been to these meetings. Now, this is the third one, I think. Everybody keeps talking about a marina, but the objection isn't to the marina, it's to the warehouse. But anyway, these comments, hard to believe that our county commissioners would so clearly defy the residents' desire to not have a huge boat storage facility on the beautiful A1A corridor by approving a change in the rules to specifically allow a boat storage facility that the residents oppose. Another comment, I have a hard time wrapping my head around the fact that these are our government officials blatantly disregarding the will of the voters. The third one, we live in the hammock, some of us close by to this eyesore, do what's right. And finally, I guess listening to Mr. Minion's presentation at the end, I mean, interesting that he said that he looked at all these rules around the Florida about marinas, and they never mention a warehouse. And that's because a marina does not include a warehouse. And this is a warehouse they're talking about.
Any further comments? All right, at this point, I will close.
Got 3 minutes left.
Well, come up for your rebuttal, I guess.
Bob Million again. Specifically to Mr. Bear's comments, I'm not asking for change. I've given you an avenue to approve it without a change. I believe it falls into the commercial recreational category, which is not a change, okay? If you approve that as a change, or if you approve marinas as an allowed use, and boat storage is, or boat sales are prohibited in the scenic A1A corridor, you just don't sell boats. I mean, these are all logical progressions. You know, there's no reason to delay it. Now, someone brought up that an appraiser's class code was referring to a boat storage as a warehouse. One has nothing to do with the other. I mean, the appraiser class code in Flagler County, first they say that, and secondly, it's wrong on a lot of things. The proper class code for marinas is it's airports and marinas. It's a combination classification. And very few of the 31 boat facilities defined in the Manatee Protection Plan are classified correctly. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, if I could, I just wanted to.
Sure.
Couple things. One, people seem to conflate this warehouse thing in this definition, and I understand where that's coming from. And I'm going to maybe make it more confusing or maybe make it clearer to me. If I said is a walk-in cooler a restaurant, I mean, everybody would say it's not a restaurant, right? But do restaurants have walk-in coolers? So it depends on how you use a cooler. If is a warehouse a marina? No, a warehouse is not a marina, but can marinas have a warehousing function to it? And I don't think this has a warehouse has a a marina has a warehouse, because I read the definition of it and I don't think it is that. So I think we're getting hung up in this warehousing thing. Somebody brought up the fact that, like I said, we're putting the cart before the horse, and I still think that to some degree, I think we can still make this determination tonight as a marina. And then that definition and that ordinance that will go forward, which will be reviewed again and then by the county commission, will further define that, and that's what that marina will be. So the fact that we're making it now, we are not defining all the parameters. We just got a basic understanding of what we're trying to do. So that's why I think we could go forward, and it's at the peril of whatever that we're, it's not really the peril, because either is or isn't. But I still maintain that the use is appropriate, that it is similar in the recreational aspects and some of the shopping aspect, restaurants and selling items at it. In a C2, that's why I think it is appropriate, and I don't think it is a warehouse, so I think it's not a prohibited use in particular. In a marina, and a particular application that may come in front of us that may break that definition, that's a different story. But in general, I still maintain that the motion that I made is appropriate. Thank you.
Counselor?
Mr. Vice Chair, some clarifications based on the public comment that you received tonight. You did your best to focus the comments on our legislative act here as opposed to Mr. Million's prior application. All the comments referring to warehouse were clearly referring to his specific application, which is not what you're deciding right now. That is not what you're deciding. That would be decided in a different item not in your legislative capacity when you're interpreting the code. It's a much more abstract intellectual exercise that you are looking at a industrial manual and determining whether what it's telling you is similar to the types of uses that are listed already in our code. And I know that you understand that and you did try to clarify, but for the purposes of the record, I would be amiss if I didn't further instruct you of what your role is here. Also, to follow up on Mr. Baer's comments, I think he may have left. Well, I hope he's okay. He did mention his ear. We work with him quite a bit, and sometimes we agree and sometimes we don't, but he is a good lawyer and a good professional. He mentioned about the agenda being unclear, and that's why at the very beginning of the meeting, Adam and I, the planning director and I, tried our best to make clear that what you're doing is acting in a legislative capacity in this use determination and not evaluating a particular site plan application. This is a legislative act. It is not quasi-judicial. You're not evaluating a particular plan. And the second point he made was asking how Mr. Million or anybody else could have standing to ask you to do this. It is allowed in our code. We actually have a form that you fill out to ask for a use determination. Anybody can do it. You pay a fee to the county, you fill out a form, and because it's legislative, anybody can do it. Any constituent can do this. It's not a quasi-judicial matter. You don't have to have standing to ask for it. Anybody can do that. So I wanted to clarify the record for that. And the last point, we did take a look to see about which properties are currently zoned C2 and which have access to the waterway versus A1A or both. But you have to keep in mind, this what you determined tonight could be the rule for a generation from now. And properties can be rezoned. De-annexations can occur. It's not inappropriate to ask the question about where could this end up, but please keep in mind that as a legislative act in interpreting our code and making a determination, it's a much broader action that you're doing as opposed to just specific properties that are currently under this zoning. And that was all.
My motion was to find that the use of a marina was similar to those in a C2 district based on the definition of a marina in the SIC manual, and that it isn't prohibited. And you know, I don't have to go through all the definition I just said again, but it's also and it's not prohibited because as a warehouse use, because it is not a warehouse. And that is appropriate because of the recreational aspect to it, to the C2, and in particular, the Scenic Overlay District. And I was recommending that it be approved as a special exception.
We have a second, right?
Have any comments? You
At this time.
add anything before I bring it to a vote? No. All right, as the motion stands, I will bring it to a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those not in favor, nay. Passes 4-1. Now my question is, where do we go from here?
Item
We have item
7.
number,
Item 7 on the agenda, right?
no, we have this, where is it?
6.
6.
Item 6 on the agenda?
Item 6. Item 6. Discussion. Did that already, didn't we?
No.
No? Just had a whole discussion about marinas, didn't we?
Well, now, no, this is about the proposed amendment. cart before the horse. It's item number 6.
Item number 6. All right. I don't know where we're going with this, but Mr. Mengel?
But this is the extension of the discussion we had at the last meeting, and so what we've done is put it in the context of the Land Development Code, and so it's not been put together as an ordinance. It's not been advertised as an ordinance. There's been no action that's been recommended on the part of the planning board. What we've done is we were thinking about it, just as I think one of the public comments was, well, this is showing up in 18 zoning districts. We said tier 1s could be allowed in residential, so that would make sense because we have a lot of residential zoning districts. And so we wanted to make sure that you saw how that looked. And so what we've done is we put it in a double underline format for the new text in the context of what is this going to look like? What would be the breadth of a Marina amendment that would happen within our code? And so the bulk of it's going to occur within a section of our code that already talks about piers and docks and related uses. It's specific to Bulow Creek, but we thought that was a good spot for it to go. And so that's where you'll see within the packet at the section 30610, 3.06.10, and what we've called this is, and renamed, boating facilities, docks, boathouses, piers, boat ramps, and marinas. And so the new language, again, underlined here with a double underline, and it's in your packet towards the back. It's in that section 6A. And you'll see what we've done here. And so what I've done is I've added language specific to docks, boathouses, and piers that coincides with other regulations, other agencies. Didn't think I needed to put this in there, but as long as we're doing it, let's go ahead and put it in there. And so your 1,000 square foot threshold is a threshold that's used by other agencies. If we're going over that, then you need a different type of permitting. 500 square feet for your OFW is your limitation. Some of the comments before, what about OFWs? What about Class 2 waters? We don't have much of either of those within Flagler County, and particularly within our jurisdiction. We have a few. We do have some applicability here. So first one we wanted to do was talk about boats, docks, boathouses, and piers. Specific. So that language, new. You may be asking yourself, why does this have to do, what does this have to do with marinas at all? Well, again, I'm giving you the preamble. I think it's something that as long as we're touching this section that's already existing in our code, that was mainly serving to be a prohibition on new docks on Bulow Creek, we go ahead and address these other items. So private distinction, commercial distinction there with those. You'll see then public docks and boathouses and piers requiring public use approval. Overwater surface area consisting of that hardscape that's there. Building permits to be issued along with any other agency permits. Dimensional requirements applying. We've had a bit of a difficulty with that. And so what I'm intending there is that your side lot lines extend waterward and that we then project off of that line the side setbacks that would apply, your height requirements that would apply. Realizing that in most cases, your dry land portion is the limits of your lot. In some cases, it's not the case. We have that up along the part of the old canal that's around Hammock Moorings North, where those lots extend into that center of the old canal, and so those actually have a portion of the water body that sits within their lot area. They still require permitting. They still require permitting through the Water Management District, also through the county, and so that. But we've had some issues, particularly there, about what if somebody does too much? What if they have a side-loaded dock that's part of this? So we wanted to have some notion of setbacks here, and some dimensional requirements, at least as far as how big can you build without exceeding what should be your fair share. Extend the projection. I'm saying there, and I think this makes sense, 1/4 of the average width of the adjoining canal or water body, or the minimum distance necessary to extend access in the dry land portion to the parcel area to waters of sufficient depth to allow vessel access. We talked about that last time, 4 foot of depth. I think somebody said, well, 4 foot's not good. I think I found that reference in statute. I didn't make it up. I get it, it's tidal, but let's go ahead and just make it sufficient depth is what I've come up with. No real term of art here. I think that makes sense. If you want to launch a kayak, fine, 8 inches, whatever. If you want to launch your your boat with your, whatever, just 200 horsepower Kawasaki on the back of it, then okay, that's something a little different. And so the minimum necessary is what's necessary for you to be able to launch whatever you're trying to launch. So the language then here under 8 that you'll see is the language that's existing in the code now. We added the word marina to that also in that prohibition on Bulow Creek.
Is that term Volusia County correct in number 8?
I think it is because it goes, let me make sure it's, yes. So that's southward from the headwaters to the Volusia County line is where we want that limit to be. And so if you know that part over there, that was our intent. And so we have viewing platforms that are fairly routinely permitted. We don't see too many of them, but not too many docks. And that's, again, tied in because of the special nature of Bulow Creek and its designation as an OFW. Boat ramps, I didn't get into a whole lot of detail there. You'll see where I'm saying that these are part of site plan review process. I do have a separate parking requirement that I've come up with for those. And then we get into the marinas. And so the marina language that I have, Tier 1, at least 3 watercraft not to exceed 1 wet dock slip per residential lot or dwelling unit. And so last time we talked about the 25 that I had in there before didn't make a lot of sense for some of the others we have. This is a good time for me to mention what's happening at Yacht Harbor. And so a bit of a left turn, but that prompted us to look at what's going on there. I think it's approved. I think it was listed elsewhere for 212 wet slips. Our development agreement says private. We have online found that it is not a private facility. So the one that's at the base of the dock, at the base of the bridge, is being advertised today for public use. And so we may have a zoning violation to investigate there that we may proceed with. But that is a concern for us. That's something that if somebody tells us it's going to be private members only, whatever the case may be, that's a concern when it is not that. And so that's what we've found out in our research with this. The other facilities that we looked at and other facilities that were mentioned, so you had Yacht Harbor, you had what now is Marina del Palma, you had a wet component, a marina component, likely I think it had a dry component also with it in Marina del Palma, and also the case in Gardens at Hammock Beach, we had that. Those 3 have in common that they're all PUDs. And so how we did it before, which was a question that came up, we did them because they were planned unit developments. And so then that prompts then that other question, well, if it's not a listed use, is it a prohibited use? And I think we already beat that a little bit to death already on C2, where we have C2 having specifically listed prohibiteds, but allowing then uses that maybe weren't specifically listed or have a specific standard along with them, dimensional requirements or parking as being allowed within PUDs. Whether that's right or wrong, I can't comment on. It was something that's happened. It's our history. I can say with certainty that each of the 3 examples that I've given you, the Yacht Harbor, what's now Marina del Palma, and the Gardens at Hammock Beach, staff in each of those instances had asked the applicants, what's your parking? How are you handling the parking for these? And there would be then a response from the applicant. There was never a requirement that we came back and communicated to an applicant of saying, we want this many for wet, we want this many for dry. Your Tier 2, being, I think, consistent with what I presented before, I'm intending for that to be ancillary to other operations. That's related to something else that's of a commercial nature. Your Tier 3 then being your what we would consider the marina definition from the Florida statutes. And again, I don't want to head in that tangent because I got a different definition than what statute has. But remember, and this is what changed my mind. And I'll read it into the record. I intuitively agree with my colleague that had written his letter that said marinas are wet. And so you have this language from statute. Marina means a licensed commercial facility, provides secured public moorings or dry storage for vessels on a lease basis. Commercial establishment authorized by a licensed vessel manufacturer's dealership is considered a marina for non-judicial sale purposes.
If I could, let me interrupt you if I would. Okay, so I'm going to just play the devil's advocate here. So when this ordinance is going to be approved, any operation that may be defined as a marina would have to fall into this definition to ever get another building permit or do some other, you're grandfathered in as a marina, but you have to meet a definition in here, I'm assuming. The reason why I say that is because Bing's Landing doesn't seem to fall into this. So you would think it'd be tier 3, but read the first sentence in tier 3. As served for a business or income-producing purpose as a principal use or structure. So where is the public use marina? Where is the one that allows the general public to have one that is not for income-producing? And where does that fall into here?
I think the quick thing I'd say there is, I don't know of a public facility we have right now that allows you to have either wet or dry storage.
Okay, but I'm
So
not
we
even
don't-
talking about storage. Just talking about what
That's
marina.
that's what I think a marina requires. Is
So
your-
what, it's not
your-
under
your-
a 2, because it would be that's an accessory use, and it's not under 1, it's not a residential, so which,
Boat ramp is where I was heading with, and so when I put in boat
don't
ramp,
think the Bings would be considered a marina?
we don't, best I know, we don't allow someone to stay within the basin overnight in their boat. You know, and so that's my quick answer for you, is there's no dry storage that's there. There's no wet slip that's available for someone. There's no utility hookups that I'm aware of. We may give somebody safe harbor in the event of a storm. I can imagine, I don't think we're going to chase somebody away if you're caught on the intercoastal, you're transiting, you're traveling. If you happen to pull in, we're not going to come and tell somebody they have to leave. But that is not and I'll tell you that, I think we all remember what Bing's was. Bing's had that. Bing's they had a little bit of everything. Like it or not. But, our operation is not we don't have a pump out, we don't have fueling, I think I could give you more reasons why Bing's is not a marina than reasons why it would be.
So you're using
boat
the
ramp.
definition of a marina to include overnight storage of some sort?
I think that's the whole idea with the marina. The examples we had
So
last time.
if that
we were,
is why we should list that as a definition somewhere, right?
You want to say overnight?
Well, I mean, if that's what you're saying it is, if you're saying marina definition is,
He's got it for business income producing purposes. I mean,
so that's what my question is what if Bing's is not a marina, because I would assume it is, because I did not see where a marina had to have overnight storage. You're saying that it is for it not to be one?
Let's go ahead and look at how I define, so the marina, any structure, combination of structures other than a single residential dock or slip located on or over the water surface or on land adjacent to it, which is designed or used for the mooring or storage of watercraft. I don't,
So there's no overnight thing. So that one is, right now, is designed for the mooring of a watercraft. That's what it does. And in it, we have other uses associated with, and Bing's Landing in particular, there's other recreational uses. There's the parking of the boats, which they park there during the day. There's a restaurant. There's what do they call it? The bait and tackle. That's on the property as a part of the definition of what that property has to have. So I'm just saying, I'm not sure that if you're kind of falling in between that. Either we fix it and the income is not the only one allowed, and it is a marina, or if it's not a marina, then it's falling under the definition of one because it doesn't say overnight parking in it.
you may be looking for a very lucrative business opportunity for us as the county to be able to get into, because
There you go.
we didn't want to do that. I mean, I don't
There
think
you
we're in
go.
that business. And I'll say for the record too, best I know, our parks still close. I mean, Bing's, I don't think, I mean, I know you can go there and fish off the docks, but I think if we had somebody who was there, at 11, I think, and if they were, we're chasing them away. They're not to stay overnight. And so I guess you could say storage if you're tying it up to go and get a barbecue meal. I don't know if I would call that.
Well, all I'm saying, Adam,
mooring.
if overnight is the differentiating part, you didn't put it in here?
We could say that for the overnight mooring or storage of watercraft, if you want to add that to the definition.
That's where you
if
think
that-
that's going?
that
Then? I'm
makes
just
you-
saying, I mean, I'm just trying to, because I didn't see it fitting in here somehow, that's all. It seems to be the definition of it, but not allowed any of the tiers, and that's why I didn't know where that was going.
What about short-term or long-term?
Okay? So we just got to find that. I mean, I just think he needs a little more work to make sure that there's a category that either we don't have, or there's something that may fit into it that's not allowed. That's all I was saying.
And so we've got the tier 2, tier 3. I've got the development standards that are here that I pulled in. And so the biggest one I think you'll see there, and I had some correspondence from Mr. Bear where he's saying, I didn't really respond to the comments, but I think I did. because there was some talk about repairs and that kind of stuff. I took it out. I don't, if there's not an interest in having that, and legitimately, if somebody has a broken windscreen on their boat and they're going to bring in the new one and put that on, I'm not chasing that down. I don't think anybody else should either. But if you're talking about doing a repair on your inboard motor, inside of the marina, that's not appropriate. And so let's just take it out completely. We didn't need to have the discussion before about barnacles and all that. It's not our concern. I do get boat washing. I understand that. I think that's something that's there. And your fuel spill plan. We have that here. We have the hurricane preparation response plan. The dry boat storage, I think that we had before, the fully enclosed building, the fire sprinkler system. I held away from citing a specific NFPA requirement from the National Fire Protection Association because those have a tendency to change. And so if you're going to install it, you're going to install it to meet the requirement. I don't have to cite the standard. It's going to meet the requirement.
If you were to build a marina and it's under 5 acres, does it need a site development? Does it need, in general, would it need a site development plan, or is it automatically approved? How is that? Is it staff approval, or?
So I don't have to do that either, because the way our language is structured, and so what I've pulled up here is the part that's specific for the C2, but you'll see this language track fairly closely. Oh, and I'll go ahead and I'll highlight both of them. I'm sorry. Let me go ahead and hit both of these here, and then I'll read this into the record also. So this is specific to the C2. Site development plan requirements. 1, a site development plan meeting the requirements of Appendix B is required. Lots or parcels of 5 acres or more require site plan approval by the planning board. That's your authority. Number 2, lots or parcels less than 5 acres require site plan approval by a technical review committee. This is in each of our zoning districts. I have the asterisk here that says, A1A scenic corridor. Site development plan requirements in the A1A scenic corridor. Site development plan as per the requirements of Appendix B, site development plan review of the Flagler County Land Development Code. A sign plan, landscaping plan, building elevations in conformance with the regulations of the A1A scenic corridor shall be required for simultaneous review.
So no matter what the size is, if it's in the overlay district, it's coming up for a site review by the planning board.
No, that's not what it's saying there. It's just saying that under the A1A, you have the extra requirements that you have to have, that it adds in the sign plan, a landscaping plan, building elevations.
Okay,
Ordinarily,
so-
we don't look for those. And so you still have your acreage.
In the motion that I made it a special exception. So those items would then be brought in front of us at that special exception.
Special exception would have
So
and it's
all
basically a
the
site
items,
plan.
however that is addressed, would be then addressed in a special exception.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Let me go back. So I've got those development standards that are there. Let's see what else we have. Outstanding Florida waters where you cannot have new or expanded facilities there. Relationship to Manatee Protection Plan, I think I heard Mr. Baer mention that. I will differ with his opinion on that. I did include a provision here, and I think it's appropriate. New docks, boathouses, piers, boat ramps, marinas consisting of 5 or more slips or expansion of existing dock, boathouse, pier, boat ramp, or marina into a facility with 5 or more slips shall comply with the boating facility citing recommendations as provided in the Manatee Protection Plan. The Board of County Commissioners adopted it. I'm not saying it's operationally the same as zoning. I'm saying that it should be a consideration here. It's not, to me, uncommon. I think we actually have a pretty good example in the A1A scenic corridor overlay where we can draw a parallel between that and what I think has been referred to before as the design manual.
It's
being
a
desired to be
tool
reviewed.
in the zoning.
It is a
isn't
tool.
the zoning itself, it's a tool.
And so I'd like to make it a specific tool that I'm listing it here. That's why I wanted to put it here. If the desire on the part of the planning board is not to include that in the recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, I understand that. But I wanted to have it as part of the mix. I included several definitions. The definitions weren't necessarily magical or unique. Again, I did mention the marina. The definition I have is differing from Florida statutes, but the others that I've included as the new definitions, I relied heavily upon what was included either in statute or Florida Administrative Code. I do want you to pay particular attention to the zoning districts themselves and where I've listed Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3. And if you can, then include that as best you can, holding that Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 definition up against what we have in those zoning districts to see if those are appropriate. I think uniformly what I've intended to do, hopefully I've done it consistently, your tier ones will show up in your residential, your tier twos and tier threes will show up in your non-residentials. Your tier three being reserved mainly to those that are your more intensive, your commercial high intensity, your C2, your industrial. And so that's what I've tried to get with that consistency.
The PUD had them all in it, which was appropriate.
Yes.
In this,
I debated that a bit, but
I think it works. I think, again, I mean, depending on it's a creative design tool, the PUD, and it allows you to use whichever one is appropriate for that particular design.
Yes, sir. You did see, I could add one more. So in some of the kind of the lower intensity PUDs, we make the distinction. I did not include all three of them.
Right, the tier one is in the NRC, the New Rural Community one, which made sense as well, too.
With that, I'll close. I know it's a bit nebulous of what I wanted to do with this more than anything else, and I'm not particularly proud of I don't poke holes in it. That's what it's intended to be here for. I appreciate your comments that you had last time. I want you to look at it in the context now that's presented as if it would look in the Land Development Code. I think this is the tool that you needed last time because we didn't have that before. If this is appropriate and you want to see it again, I can bring it back as an ordinance to you. If you choose not to take any action, you can do that. That's your prerogative also. You can still give me comments. I can come back. You can say, go on to the Board of County Commissioners if you want to. As you all know, we've had some bypassing before of the Planning Board on Land Development Code items.
According to our regulations, though, if we're going to make this an LDC thing, we're supposed to see it and then recommend one way or the other to them.
I would say yes. And
I mean, and we're already doing this, so I don't, if I can, as just one member up here, I thought you did a really good job at capturing most of this. I brought out what I told you about the public-private definition part of it. I think you need a little bit of work to define that. And I did look at all, someone else had done their homework too and read this thing, and about all the different zones that's in there, and just about all of them were residential zones, as you talked about. And I thought the way you did it was well done. So I'm fine with it, except for the parts that you did there. And we need to get it done. So my recommendation is you clean it up just a little bit and give it the Adam touch, and maybe we see it as a proposed ordinance that let the commission then. It'll come from us and then go to them, and then whatever happens there, happens there.
I think I'm hearing the consensus there, and I certainly appreciate your comment on overnight. If that's a general consensus, everybody, I will add that in. I don't think there's any harm in that. I think I'll put it into the definition. That way it'll apply to all three tiers.
I just wanted you to think about how that place relates to it. For instance, if somebody had a restaurant on the intercoastal, and they put slips, we have one in Flagler Beach, who has a marina, but he has a restaurant. You have boat slips out there. Some of the fancy places on South Florida, you can pull your boat up to, and you go to the restaurant and enjoy yourself, and you get it and you leave. And it is not overnight. Is that a marina or is it not a marina? And how those fit into it. So I was just looking for you to differentiate how Bing's Landing falls into this thing, and if it isn't that, then what is it, and how do we define it there, and so on and so forth. That's all.
If I could respond, that I'd say the example you gave us is a tier 2 marina in our nomenclature, and I'd also say for the record that if somebody has a little too much to drink that night, we're not going to chase them down. If we include that language ultimately in there, to me it's the same as operating a vehicle.
They would be allowed then to park overnight.
Certainly they would.
At that restaurant.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to put that in the code, but that's.
Well, no, you are. Well, if it's a tier 2, and then you said you had to have overnight, then you're allowing overnight in a tier 2.
I don't want a tier 2 to turn into the tier 3 type. Well,
so maybe you got to
so
think about
let me take that. I think you probably picked out the problem. If I put it under that definition, then my tier 3 may very well have liveaboards. And so my intent with that, and you'll see they could allow that. So I need to be careful with that.
But maybe, again, just look at how that
Yes, sir.
public use marina fits in, if there's a tier 4 or another aspect of the definition, something in there to handle that.
Mr. Chairman, I'm also open for public comment if, I know we had done that before, but certainly I'm more here for your discussion on this than
I'm
others.
just, at this point, we're going to come back again, or I'm just trying to understand what's the next step at this point.
With the consensus of the board, and I think I'm hearing that I'm on the track, I would, next step, advertise this as an ordinance for the planning board to take a formal action on recommending it to the Board of County Commissioners.
Okay.
And so
That would be the next meeting?
Yes, sir. Yeah. And so what I'm hearing is there's consensus to do that. You don't need a motion to put that together.
Thank you. Is there any more public comment before we end this meeting?
My name's Jody Bollinger. I live at 5648 North Ocean Shore Boulevard. I just had a couple comments and questions about the new Marina amendment. Under the section where it said Marina standards, and there were 10 listed, I wanted to applaud the staff because they included 6 of the policies from the comprehensive plan, but they did not include the one in the comprehensive plan that says pump out services are required. And that was in the first iteration, but I didn't see it in the second. I don't know if I missed it. Another one of the Marina Standard D, it addresses uncomplimentary land use buffers, and it references Article 5. But Article 5 is already in our code, and so if it's a Marina standard, it seems that maybe it should have some enhanced protection up and above Article 5. Also, Standard C of a Marina standard, it's the one about all outside storage areas shall be screened from adjacent properties, and it also references Article 5, but it doesn't enhance Article 5, so I'm trying to understand why it was included as a Marina standard if it really doesn't enhance what's already in Article 5. Above-ground gasoline storage tanks are outside storage of fuel, and it, I think, should be given special attention for screening in Standard C. I would also say the standard should also address the fact that outdoor storage is prohibited in the A1A scenic corridor, and therefore outdoor storage of fuel is prohibited. I'm also curious, I think maybe you did answer this. Originally, it said that there should be 4 feet of water at all times at a marina. That was dropped. I would like to see a marina standard that has something to do with noise, to address the forklift operation, something about hours of operation, possibly a residential sound package if it's adjacent to residential. The City of Palm Coast Land Code includes the following. No commercial marina structure shall be located within 100 feet of a residential property line. The City of Dania Beach, Florida, Indian River County, and Martin County all have similar setback requirements in their codes. I would ask you to please consider enhanced setbacks to protect the quality of life for residential properties. And lastly, Flagler County is home to the southern section of the Guanatolamata National Estuarine Research Reserve. Our Florida Administrative Code states that outstanding Florida waters generally include National Estuarine Research Reserves. So I would ask you to please consider prohibiting marinas in our National Research Reserve area in Flagler County. Thank you, gentlemen, for your consideration.
Thank you.
Quickly, I'm Dennis Clark again from Scenic A1A Pride, and I would suggest that we have a review of the proposed ordinance at the next Scenic A1A Pride meeting on August 27th, if it's available by then, prior to coming to the planning board. And if that's not possible, then maybe things could be delayed, but that's probably reasonable, given that there's not too many changes. And I also wanted to say that the HCA did submit a list of recommendations, of which some included safety features and noise, environmental, washing boats, oil changes, things like that, that probably ought to be included as well. So take a look at that, because that might be something that will come up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob Millian, 17 South Waterview, Palm Coast. I think it's a good start. In follow-up to Mr. Bear's point, I think that boat yards should be differentiated at least by a disclaimer. You don't want welding and sanding and that kind of stuff in a marina. And by not including it or not stating it, you leave it open. Most of the LDCs define marinas as different from boat yards. Second thing is that parking, I truly, and I've said this before, I strongly believe parking should be by the type of boat slip. A dinner boat that holds 100 people needs more parking than a dry storage or a single wet slip. All of the clean marina, fuel spills, hurricane stuff, that should be standard. I mean, that's pretty much, anyone that has a decent marina complies with that anyway, and the more you can reinforce that, the better it is. The final thing, and I started to address this the other night and ran out of time, when I asked the city of St. Augustine what was wrong or what they felt they'd done wrong with their marina code, it kind of surprised me. They have an issue with marinas being turned into bed and breakfasts. So they had a guy that had a wet slip marina with 30 slips, I think, and a guy came in and started buying old sailboats. Didn't care if they sailed or not. Stuck them in the marina, put an Airbnb thing on them, and started doing it. They found out they couldn't park it. And so, yeah, it's a marina, and yeah, he had his 1 to 3 or whatever it was parking requirement, but now all of a sudden he's got 1 car per boat slip, and they couldn't stop it. So, you know, that's just, they've had a code for a long time, and that's what they found. And those are my only comments. Thank you.
Good evening, Greg Blasset, President and CEO of the Palm Coast Flagler Regional Chamber. So yeah, I agree with Mr. Million's comments. It's a good start. I think there are a few key things to continue the conversation on. Parking, I think having a deeper conversation about that. But you know, for tonight, you know, we can get together and have a conversation with staff and do that next go around. So in terms of what's in front of you tonight, I think it was a great effort by staff to put this together and really try to get their hands around an issue that's really important because of what we just had here earlier tonight. We need to get some clarity around marinas and the future development of them in this county as we look to the future in Flagler. So as it stands now, the Chamber supports and look forward to continuing to follow this as it moves forward. Thank you.
Chair and board members, I'm the same person I was an hour ago, so I won't reintroduce myself, but...
If you can, I'm sorry, slide over just a little bit to your right, to the microphone.
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
Thank you.
I would just say I feel very disappointed that none of the HCA recommendations really seem to make it into the draft. And I thought we had some really good suggestions when you put a marina 50 feet from a residential home. And I think, you know, Jody went through those. I'm not going to repeat them, but I just wanted to just say I feel very disappointed that there's not much in there that really matters to us. So.
Danielle Anderson, Friends of A1A Scenic and Historic Coastal Byway Program Administrator. I've heard a lot of interesting things tonight, and I would just remind all of you to be very cognizant of the scenic overlay and really trying to keep those protections intact. That is what makes us an all-American road. That is what makes our community special. And those are the things that earn us the designations and the things that we get. So it's easy. We support economic development, but we want it to be responsible, and we want development to be responsible and in line with the code that has been set out. So please just keep that in mind when you're moving forward.
Thank you.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name's William Jordan. I live at 5572 North Ocean Shore Boulevard. And I'd like to say the process that we been going through the last 2 years, it is kind of amazing. I was kind of surprised when I saw the way things were going tonight. As was earlier said, I think we kind of put the cart before the horse, but that ride that's going on down the road, I think you have the opportunity, and they have done a lot of work on trying to put the ordinance together, but I think what Kathy mentioned and those of us that have spent some time, energy, and effort in trying to provide you with information and feedback from the other local property owners in the hammock and from the surrounding area as to what we view as the issues with regards to marinas and with regards to a specific marina. But the deal is, most of Flagler County waterways through the intercoastal, it's a narrow 300 to 500 foot long river. And I wrote in the email I sent to Adam and asked him to distribute to you, I was kind of surprised last time by the cavalier attitude with regards to wakes. And, you know, they fished the young man out of the intercoastal right there in front of my house. It is serious. We do have a lot of boaters. We do have a lot of personal watercraft. And we have folks some that know how to use them and some that don't. But to not look at the entire big picture and try to make it better, I think is doing a disservice to the entire community. I took personal affront to Mr. Buckley's comment last time where he said those of us that live there don't want anybody else to enjoy it. That couldn't be further from the truth. I try to share our community with others, but I want everybody to enjoy it, not just, you know, the few that can afford a slot in somebody's dry stack. It's got to be for everybody. And that's why we have Bing's Landing, and that's why we do those kind of things. But it's got to be done right, or nobody's going to be able to enjoy it. And so I know you've got a lot of work in front of you, and I know staff's done a lot of work. I think the Community Association has provided a lot of good information that just seems to be getting swept aside. One of the big concerns is, not just for us, but for anyone else that is next to a C2, that you do have some adequate buffers, especially with the noise in a dry stack. Thank you for your time and effort.
There are no further comments. I'll close this section. I'd like to make a statement. I thought we were going to go somewhere else tonight, but I was misunderstood it. And I wrote down some thoughts, and I'd just like to share them. And, you know, I was thinking about parameters. I was thinking about, you know, I jotted these down, I don't know, 15 different ideas. Some of them have been said. I'll repeat them just for my own self. You know, I have down distance from residential as a question. And these are things that we'd have to address, screening or fencing or the height of it, the ratio of wet slips versus dry storage. Because, you know, that's something that you have to think about if you're going to have dry storage. Do you have a spot for those people to come in and dock up and get off safely? The parking ratio of cars to storage spaces, the height of the structure, the boat, if there's a boat basin requirement, the driveway spacing, and the width, because you're bringing in trailers. What is the maximum size of the boats that will be stored? The hours of operation in an industrial setting versus a residential. And further down the line is how are we going to control off-street parking, because there's always a point where there's not enough parking. I mean, I don't care what department store you build, there's always those half a dozen days in the year where there's not enough parking spots. We have to discuss, you know, think about the acreage requirement, not less than whatever acreage we decide on. The auxiliary uses, which we all, you know, touched upon. The amount of frontage that you would need on a body of water. You know, you can't do this with a 50-foot piece of stretch of water or a piece of property. If there's going to be a ramp or a sling, what is the length of that going to be? You know, and then you go into sprinkled and safety, and, you know, we heard all the different ideas about if there's gas tanks. So there's a lot of things that have to go into this. Not, you know, it's not cut and dry. And I just wanted to bring this up because I had thought about it and wanted to share it with all. Anyone else would like to make a statement before I call this to an end?
Yeah, first of all, I wanted to say that I appreciated a lot of the comments. I wanted to point out Jody Bollinger, she did a great job researching, some good points in there. I agree with several of the items there personally. I think that the screening elements, I mean, I disagree that you can't have storage outside of fuel, because every gas station, including the one in the Hammock, got storage outside of their building, and you don't want to store fuel inside of a building. Whether it has to be buried or, above ground or below ground, I mean, there may be environmental issues with either. So I don't know if we should get into the particulars about how you store it, but if it is above ground, it should be screened, because we're doing that in other areas. So I thought the screening element was good. There were several other comments she had on there. I wasn't sure of the whole Article 5 thing, so I'm going to leave that up to you. I don't really, for the life of me, there was another one she said on there I thought we should definitely look at, and I had a brain haze there. I won't use the other word, but also, Mike, I think some of your comments were on. I think, though, personally, the hours of operation thing, we brought that up last time, and I don't know how I guess if you would try to prohibit all, it's up to a business, if they want to stay open at certain hours, but if you have a marina.
I'd say with the hours of operation would be also different in an industrial
Right,
versus a residential.
right. And if it's a tier 1, I don't think we should have a lot of the things you just talked about probably don't apply at all in the tier 1. Probably in the tier 2, so you're getting into minutia as to what tier they are. So there's a lot to digest in the comments you made. Some of them, I like the fire stuff and all that. I said last time, and I still believe that if the powers that be, if the fire code is applicable, it's applicable, it falls in, and that's the state law, and they keep changing these laws all the time. And for us to stick it in here could make it obsolete or inappropriate down the road, where the state finds this is appropriate and we have a code. Because as was already pointed out tonight, this code is not always updated, and there are inconsistencies in here, so I'd hate to go too specific on another jurisdiction's body, let them handle it. I do agree that you did have about building permits and all that. Okay, that makes sense, just reiterating, but but it's there. But some of the comments that you would only apply to the tier 3, and I think that the size of it, we're already determined, or not determined, but realize that a lot of this is only going to happen in the overlay, and the overlay was limiting the size. I think, if I remember that, if I'm not missing that, it was limiting the size to a 5-acre marina. Is that correct?
Maximum, yeah, maximum.
Right. And maybe, again, you could have a larger property. I think you pointed out, Mr. Millian, you could have a much bigger property, but if the marina part of it is less than 5 acres, and that's the marina part, and then they have another part of it, a restaurant part, or whatever, I don't know. To the extent of the items that you listed on there, I think some of them are specific to one thing, and Adam, I don't know if you can make any more, reiterations to that. I think the idea that Mr. Clark said about going to the Hammock community, they've expressed an awful lot of interest in this, and it probably makes sense if they got a shot to make a formal presentation back to you. So instead of everyone coming up and hitting us, we can then read it in the background and see where that is, and it may make it more efficient. So, but I do think, with my mystic hat on here, I can see an application coming forward, and it would be good to have guidance before any particular unnamed application comes forward, that we have some stuff to go by. So that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you. Any further comments from the board? Well, I think at this point, I will call the meeting, bring up a motion to end the meeting.
I hope I have something.
Oh, you don't do that?
I have some. I'll try to make this quick. Adam, are you familiar with, we've ended that item, number 6. We're on a new item now, which was board discussion, if I can.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Adam, are you familiar with the state law that passed that mandated any new land development applications have the language about private property use. And Sean, are you familiar with that?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's an element that's required. Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm aware of it.
And we are, according to that statute, we are to incorporate that in our LDC, because any new land development applications from, I think, a week or so ago going forward would be held up, unless it's a small, there's some applications that would be not at fault. There's a bunch to this. It's a very short chapter. City of Palm Coast has jumped and just went on there, threw it up in front of their commission and put it in there with the language that the state recommends. All I'm saying is I think we need to act on it and get that language. I don't think we have a choice whether to do it. We just drag our feet and just hold things up going forward. It basically just states that these I think there's 4 elements of property rights be considered in any amendment. And rather than it coming in front of us because we didn't do it, I think we should just be proactive and do it. And I could tell you, I'm bringing this up as a member of the HBA, which we had a state meeting today on it, and they were bringing up, there are some communities that are just totally dragging their feet, and they're talking about, and they're specifically doing this, and there's going to be lawsuits going back and forth over it. So if we drag our feet and then there's issues come up and applicants come forward and just because we haven't acted upon something that we should have been acting upon. So that's all. Just wanted to put it on the record that we need to look at it, in my opinion. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, should I make a motion? Would someone like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll
to-
make a motion, we
Thank-
adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Good night.